Okay, how many of you are here for the first time? Raise your hand. All right, fantastic. I'm so excited. I think that I love Canada because when you think about it, it's a different culture. And what I found out just recently is there's a lot of filming done in Canada. How many people knew that? There's a lot of filming done in Canada. And I researched as to why that is. It's because you are more reliable, both as the cast and crews. Like, you show up. So that's fantastic. We love that as physicians because we want to help people. And when we find someone who's motivated, that they want to learn, that they want to implement things, that's like heaven on earth for us. So Ponce de Leon was the explorer that originally looked for the fountain of youth as a physical fountain. And of course, he didn't actually find it. But we, of course, have been searching ever since. In my genre as a physician, there are many ways we search for longevity. Sometimes we do Botox, we might do plastic surgery. Anyone know what PRP is? PRP, does anyone know what that is yet? Platelet-rich plasma. We're trying to culture now stem cells. Stem cell therapy for joint therapy, but also for growing back hair. Lots of things they're doing with it now. It's not, become really widespread yet. There is some concern because there was recently in New Mexico at a spa, they were doing PRP to, I think, regrow hair, and they gave two of the patients HIV. So that is a problem. And so what I found also is even with economic downtrends, even with the Depression, recession, did you know that one branch of medicine was never touched? Never got less, and that was plastic surgery. And that's all cash, if you can believe that. That's no insurance, no anything. And thanks, babe. Praise the Lord. Glass, very important. Anyone read the recent New England Journal study, March, that this relates to? Okay, so they biopsied plaques in people's carotids and in their coronary arteries. And then they did a molecular analysis on what they were made of. And roughly half of them in the study had nanoplastics in them. And they followed those people prospectively, right? Prospectively, and they found that if you had nanoplastics in your plaques, you had a 450% increased death rate from all causes. Not just stroke and MI, but those were significantly elevated too. So I've been telling this to people for a long time because the dioxins in plastic, but there's a reason why. When you reach in that, reach into the back window, that plastic bottle that's been there for 3 or 4 months, and then you open it up and it tastes like plastic. And the main thing, the risk is heating and cooling. When you heat and cool things, it kind of changes the solubility, more things go into solution, and more things go into you from what the studies are now showing. Any ways you can tell that someone is aging? Like, how can you guess? Like, if you were to say, how old is that person? What are things you would look at as markers of aging? Wrinkles where? Specifically, so face and also hands. Very good. What's interesting? For those of you who are Seventh-day Adventists, there is actually a description of the enemy where Ellen White was shown in vision what he looks like now. And she says specifically that the flesh hangs loosely about his face and hands, right? He doesn't have access to the tree of life either. So he's aging, just like the rest of us. So face, hands, what else? Hair, what about the hair? Gray, so gray hairs, anything else? Stature, so kyphosis, specifically kyphosis. So people can lose height and kind of lose their posture from gradual decline. They're basically small compression fractures of their discs, but yes, kyphosis specifically, yes. Memory, absolutely. So their senses, their mental faculties, vision, hearing, smell. Anyone know what the last sense is to go? Hearing. Anyone know what the first sense is to go? Hearing. Yeah. It starts to go early, but it doesn't completely go away until the end, generally, not always. So there's many ways to mark aging, so many markers of aging. And people have been trying to look at those markers and see what they can do to reverse them. And sometimes when they can't reverse them, they do other things to help reverse them, right? Now, what's interesting, I'd like somebody who has a smartphone to ask whatever search engine you have, Siri, Alexa, Google, I'd like for you to ask them right now if it is possible to change gray hair back to its original color. Just ask, anyone who has one, just ask. And then read us the answer. Just ask like this. Hey Siri, right? Just do that. Maybe people don't use Hey Siri. Anyone have an answer for me? I'm proud of you guys. No one has a smartphone. That's so great. That's actually a marker of health too. Anyone else? Just say, hey Google, hey Siri, whoever has it. She should talk back to you. Somebody has it going back there.
It says, yes, onion juice can help gray hair turn black.
What's the reference?
Onions contain an antioxidant that is especially beneficial in...
What's the reference? That's fine. So I want someone to ask, because the search engine is not going to give you something. If it's just like general web, it's going to give you anything. So ask whoever your searcher is. No? Was it Siri? And she gave you onion juice? Really? Okay. That's interesting. Can you turn your gray hair back again? Can you turn your gray hair black again? I don't think I have reception in Canada. Someone else will have to answer me. What's the reference? Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, so it's interesting. So all of them are partially right. I don't know about the onion juice, but that's interesting. I would like to know more about that. But they say that it's not possible to reverse that. But Cleveland Clinic did the original studies on this, and they showed that gray hair that specifically was caused by stress could be reversed, but Cleveland Clinic said it wasn't possible after age 40. Not because they were firm that it was impossible, but they just had never observed it. Now, I want you to take a look. Do you see the mole on my palm? You see that? Everyone see the mole? That's a rare place to have a mole. Don't worry, it hasn't grown in decades. It's fine. It's all good. I got it at Loma Linda when I was going to med school. I had a bike accident, got a piece of gravel in here, and it's just hyperpigmented. But what's interesting is I have been following some of these markers, not just in patients, but in myself. And what's interesting, can you see the root? I put the root of my hair near the mole. Can you see that? What color was it previously? It was brown, like later, but what was it initially? What color was it initially? It's white. And I started noticing these hairs not only turning from white to gray, but from thin to thick. And what's very good is I use my hand because I have not only a mole, but I have a scar. I've had surgery here. When I had that bike accident, I broke a bone, so I had to put a titanium plate in, which is another interesting concept. But what's interesting is that you see that the gray hairs are actually becoming black. And I'm not only over age 40, I'm turning 50. this year, which is unheard of in any sort of scientific literature. So there's many of them, and people say, oh, but don't you get any that turn the wrong direction? I say, well, sure, I have hairs that turn the wrong direction all the time. And what's interesting is that the ones that go gray are just as helpful as the one that turns black, because what's nice about hair is it grows at a certain rate. So I can calculate when it was that happened and what was going on there. For those of you who like nose hairs, here's a nose hair that turned black, just for added comic relief. But what's very interesting is that I've been doing this for a while now, and now, praise the Lord, I have my wife to help me. This is the one that went the wrong direction. You see that? It was black, and then the roots near my mole, then it turned gray. But that is helpful. That is very helpful, because I can figure out not only what I should do, but what I should not do, if that makes sense. And the answers to those search engines were all partially correct. I need to look in the onion juice. I can't comment on onion juice yet. Don't know of any data on that. But sometimes people try to get rid of the black hairs with dye, but I can tell you that's probably one of the worst things to do to yourself, because your scalp is very absorptive, right? It sucks all that stuff in. Even like henna. I had a case of a patient that had this chronic blepharitis, which is basically inflammation of the eyes and the eyelids. And she couldn't figure out what it was. Itchy, itchy, itchy. Went to the ER, got Benadryl and antihistamines, steroids, stuff like that. It would just come back, just come back. And we were interviewing her, and my wife was just kind of listening. My wife just sat for her boards, by the way, got the highest score that she or any of her friends have ever heard of on the boards. So I'm very proud of her. She's not here, so I can brag about her a little bit, but I think she'll be back in a little bit. But she pointed out, she's like, oh, when did you last dye your hair? And then the patient got very silent. Oh, but it's natural, it's henna. But henna is one of the most common things that causes contact dermatitis. And as soon as you got rid of that, the irritation went away. But a lot of us, instead of looking at that wrinkle or gray hair as something helpful, we just cover it over, right? Let's just smooth those crow's feet away. But I want you to look at the markers of aging as something helpful, not harmful, not your enemy, because they're letting you know what's going on. And instead of just covering it over with makeup or, dyeing out the hair or whatever, just think of it this way. It's like a check engine light. When the check engine light comes on, do you unplug it? Well, I hope not, right? I hope you sit and evaluate. Here's a picture of Ashley. She's not here yet. So this is Ashley getting ready to go to work, my beautiful wife, and she has problems not so much with hair, but with skin. We were at a camp meeting one time, and she got this horrible, horrible itchy spot on her ear. You can see she had a piercing before, but she doesn't use earrings now. But do you see the little red spot there? She's like, I can't even sleep. This is so itchy. So she had a little spot of eczema. And we did something like literally no steroid, no antihistamine. Like overnight, it went from like very inflamed to, you can still see it. I don't know if you can still see it. Can you still see the little circle there? But not as inflamed and no itching. And of course, she's here somewhere. I don't know where she's in the back, but now we work as a team. And so her big issue is skin. She has a lot of challenges with skin. And since she's been using our program, I've been amazed at how her skin has responded. But does anyone know who Wyatt Allen is? Wyatt Allen, he's a pastor. He's got an interesting testimony. He's like a felon. God expunged his remedy, pardoned him. His record is totally clean now. He looked at these pictures because I posted them online because how the results she was getting. He's like, yes, but do you have any without the colorful lipstick? And I said, brother, there's no makeup in either one of those pictures at all. At all. And some people will say, well, she's a dietitian. Well, is there any food that I can eat? Antioxidants, whatever. And we've been searching all these remedies all these years, but everyone seems to march along the same pathway to aging. And of course, it can be depressing if you think about it too long. But there's hope. They've discovered that the average person doesn't use more than maybe 3 to 5% of their brain capacity. The geniuses, 7 to 10%. Have you heard of that? People just could actually fill, and a lot of the proof behind that came with people like Dr. Ben Carson, who performed hemispherectomies for seizures, and people still function on half a brain, like amazingly well. And what we've found is that the capacity of their brain, they estimate, could probably stand about 1,000 years of the current rate of filling that most of us do. But perhaps it's not even 1,000. Maybe it's even more. Maybe it's forever. Well, we don't live to be 1,000, unfortunately. But this was an old article in the early 2000s that came out for National Geographic. Anyone remember this? So they started looking at people who lived a long time. And at the time, they presented 3 blue zones. I'm going to share all 6 of them with you. But the initial blue zones were, did anyone know which ones they were? Loma Linda, Sardinia. Yeah, very good. So let's go look at Okinawa first. Why was Okinawa living such a long time? Okinawa is, of course, in Japan. At the time of the article, they lived a lot longer than the average American. And that was because they had a lot less heart disease, a lot less breast and prostate cancer. By the way, anyone know what the #1 killer worldwide is now? Heart disease. How about in developing countries? Still heart disease. Did you know that? Yeah, they've come a long way, unfortunately, in the wrong direction towards our Western sort of diseases. Just as a bonus, anyone know what the #1 cause of death is in Norway? I'll give you a hint, it's not heart disease. It's kind of an exception. Cancer. It's cancer. But generally, heart disease #1, cancer's #2. As a bonus, does anyone know what #3 cause of death is in the US? Oh, in Canada? They claim it's COVID. Did you know that? I'm just saying. I'm just telling you what the studies show. Now, we can talk about that in another lecture. But anyway, I'm just telling you, that's what it says. I didn't create the statistic. I didn't create the study either. Also, Okinawans have a plant-based diet, but they have something called ikigai, which is the reason you get up in the morning. For this guy, Fumiyasu, 84 years old, enters the Senior Olympics. He loves the decathlon. His favorite event in the decathlon, the pole vault. Anyone pole vault? Anyone know a pole vaulter? How old are they? 60? Oh, 18, okay. Yeah, but not 84, right? Yeah, so that's a demanding sport for sure. Most of the Okinawans grow their own food. They eat more, but they weigh less, interestingly enough, because their food is low in caloric density, but it's very high in nutritional density. Things like veggies, produce. For Serie Toguchi, at 104, he's gaining many elements of longevity. He has purpose, working in his garden, exercise, fresh air, sunshine. He's even taking a little nap. But what's so funny is that the interviewer, when you looked at this, the interview asked him no questions about what he was really doing, but said, "Mr. Toguchi, why the red gloves?" His answer, "They're easy to find." True statement. But that's what we often do, is we kind of major in the minors, the things that don't really make a huge difference. They also have what's called a moai, which is a group of people that get together regularly and help one another. And a moai would be non-relatives that get together about 3 times a week. Anyone have that kind of social network? You get together with friends 3 times a week or more. Only 2 people, 3 people, not many. But unfortunately, Okinawa has the highest rate of obesity in all of Japan, and a lot of people believe that that is because of the downfall of all modern civilization, the Golden Arches, and a move away from traditional sort of cultural ways of living and eating. Our next zone is Sardinia, and Sardinia is where? Italy, right? It's an island off the coast of Italy, and this is a village called Silanus. And in Silanus, the family is #1. They get together and eat a full meal every week with every person they're related to. Anyone have a family reunion once a year where everybody comes, everybody you're related to? Anyone have that meal every week with everyone you're related to? Yeah, see, very different in our societies. We all seem to be very separated, independent atoms. This guy with the cap, you can see at the little base, almost like little cap there, he's 103, and he's at the head of the table. Normally, do women live longer or men live longer? So it's very rare for a man to reach 100, but it is possible. And in Sardinia, just as many reach 100 on the male side as on the female side. Normally it's like 4 to 1. Anyone know Tom Zapara? Tom Zapara actually just passed away. Anyone know Tom? Big guy in ASI, big, did a lot of good for many people. He was 100. So it's just very rare for men to make it that long. Sardinia lives a very active outdoor life, but some people wonder if a lot of these societies, I mean, they're islands, they're kind of remote. They call them genetic incubators. And what that basically means is if you grow up on the island, you marry and reproduce with somebody on the island, right? Does that make sense? So if you originally have inhabitants of that island that are very, very, like, just genetically long-lived, you just continue to pass around that same genetic sequence. But their mindset also is different from the majority of us. This guy, Giuseppe, hopefully he won't eat that in his hand because he might lose a little bit of the longevity, right? But the interview said, well, Giuseppe, you're 85. You're 20 years older than the average retiree. Don't you feel like you should stay home and rest sometimes? And he said, sure, I feel tired all the time. But if I stayed home all day, then I would be sick. Isn't that an interesting twist on traditional Western logic? Also, Sardinia has about 300% greater antioxidants in their grapes as the mainland Italian grapes, interestingly enough. Also, they've found when they've done genetic testing, 80% of all the inhabitants are basically related to the original Sardinian inhabitants. Also, obesity affects about 10% of them. Now, that may seem like a small number to you. Anyone know about my country? How many of us have obesity in my country? What percent? Take a guess. 40? Yes, it's about 40, 42. Very good. We got to study that onion juice together sometime. That's great. And also, there's only about 2,400 in Silanus, so scientifically, there's not a lot of power to their longevity edge, because you need a lot more people than that. However, let's take a look at us. Is it possible for us to take advantage of these longevity edges? And I believed in my heart that yes, I could take advantage of it. And so I traveled to another longevity zone, a blue zone, as Dr. Buettner mentions. Does anyone know where I may have gone? California. Not that one yet. Not that one yet. Greece, yes. Icaria, Greece is actually one. But this is one in Central America. Costa Rica, in Nicoya. That's right. So I traveled to Nicoya, and I tried to learn about their culture of longevity. Not just the way they eat, but the way they deal with life, the way they think. What's their environment like? And so I interviewed a lady while I was there. Her name, of course, was Maria, right? And she lived, at that point, she was 106, turning 107, and I brought her a little meal, and I said, hey, can I help you eat that? She said, no, I can eat for myself, thank you. But it was a fantastic experience. I learned so much about it. I'll have to tell you that another time. But yes, now let's go to Loma Linda, which is the worst air quality possibly in all of the United States, but happy seniors managed to live there. One of their champions was Marge Chitan. This was a picture they took of her when she was 100, renewed her driver's license. In America, you renew your driver's license for 10 years, but they said, we won't give you 10, we'll only give you 5. But when she was 105, she renewed it again. But she was married to, did anyone know she was married, who she was married to? She was married to a physician. She was a nurse, he was a doctor. But here's another doctor. This guy's 100 years old. Dr. Shearer was at the time the oldest living water skier on the planet. Anyone water ski or know somebody who water skis? How old are they? Any senior water skiers? No. And this guy did barefoot. Can you believe it? Crazy. He's outlived most of my colleagues by several decades. This is a physician that I actually had the privilege of rotating with in the OR, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham, cardiothoracic surgeon. At 91, still performing open heart surgery. Now, what would you worry about if I told you, hey, your surgeon's coming in, he's 91? What are you worried about? Right? Aren't you? Sure you are. But I can assure you, Dr. Wareham's hands were rock steady. But that was not the most impressive thing about him. What was the most impressive thing about him, at least for me as a young medical student, was when there would be a complication, when there would be some unforeseen thing happen to the patient, when something would start bleeding or whatever, he was the calmest person in the room. He'd just say, ligate here, suction that, cut here, suture here. He would just kind of give the direction to the residents, just very calmly, didn't get upset, didn't get worried. His expression never changed, the tone of his voice never changed. And I asked somebody in the OR, I said, well, how can he be so calm? I mean, we almost lost that patient. And he said the reason why is he's been doing this for longer than any of us have been alive. He's seen all the complications. He knows what to do with all of them. At the time of the article, Lydia Newton, another Seventh-day Adventist, was 112, and the writer of the article said, is it good genes, is it divine intervention? And they said, God may or may not have something to do with it, but their religion does. And of course, I'm talking about the Seventh-day Adventists, which aren't 2,400, but over 20 million people. And many of the oldest are not isolated, they're not in the country, and they come from all races. That's the interesting thing. They're not on some island or some peninsula, right? Nicoya isn't even all of Costa Rica. Did you know that? It's just a peninsula in Costa Rica. And the last blue zone, Icaria, Nicoya, Sardinia, Loma Linda, Okinawa. Does anyone know what the last one is? I'll give you a hint. It's also in the U.S. No? I wish. That would be nice. That'd be another credit to the Adventists. It's not in any Adventist location. I'm sorry. It's in Hawaii. Did you know that? Yeah. It's Asian women in Hawaii. It's a very small little zone, but they find that those women, on average, are living like 90. Like, that's pretty high. Does anyone know what the average is, like the average lifespan, just of the regular person is? Yeah, it's like, well, what does the Bible say in Psalm 90, verse 10? 70, and if by strength, what is it? 80, so 70 to 80. The lifespan for most countries is still 70 to 80 after all these years. Can you believe that? Now in America, we lost a little bit because of COVID. Canada also did lose that. But what's interesting is the Seventh-day Adventists did also lose a little bit, but not as much as the regular population. I don't know if you guys have seen a sermon by Josh Howerton. He's one of the pastors of one of the largest evangelical churches in Texas. And he presented this phenomena that the average lifespan was 77, but the average lifespan of the Adventists is 88. Now, the difference between that is 11. And do you realize that the difference of 11 is exactly 1 out of 7 of the average? Isn't that amazing? When you give something to God, He just gives it right back to you. Isn't that incredible? Unbelievable. But let's take a look at the best of all worlds. They basically have plant-based diets, generally don't smoke, generally don't drink, because a lot of people say, well, Sardinia drinks wine. Yes, my alma mater was Loma Linda for med school. My alma mater was Stanford for residency, and we actually did a study on alcohol. How many of you have heard that alcohol reduces your cardiac risk, stroke risk? You heard that? Yeah. But do you know that's completely debunked now? Completely debunked now. They found if they just use alcohol, it does nothing. It's the congeners. It's the other chemicals in it. It's the quercetin, it's the resveratrol, which are found in the grape, just under the skin of the grape, right? That's where they came up with what's called the French paradox. Have you heard that? The French eat a lot of animal products, a lot of high cholesterol containing foods, but they have less heart disease than Americans. Why? And the concept is that they're consuming all of this quercetin and resveratrol in the form of their grapes. And yes, there's still some left after the fermentation process into wine, but that doesn't mean the alcohol is helping you. You get the same benefit just under the skin itself. This is Newsweek, a secular article, is very old, and what I wanted to put up here is that this is a non-religious sort of article, and the traditional wisdom is there, women live longer, but number 2, I have to confess, I put the giant red arrow there. So that wasn't in the original article, but what does it say? You're Seventh-day Adventists. But I also want you to look at this little apple. What does the apple say? You started school later. Has anyone ever read the book Better Late Than Early? Dr. Moore, right? Dr. Raymond Moore. But what's interesting is this is a chart on longevity. That has nothing to do with education. But who said your kids should start later? Yeah, exactly. Someone whose name begins with E and ends with Ellen White, right? The U.S. News and World Report, 11 habits to help you live to 100. Number 1, those who retire expire. Do not retire. In my job, I work with many elderly individuals. One group is my patients, very sick. One group is another elderly group of individuals, but very healthy. You know who they are? No, they're the volunteers that are pushing around the patients. Right? They're giving back. They still have ikigai. They have a purpose. They have a reason for living. If you don't have a reason for living, you're in trouble. And a lot of people, well, my kids are the right reason. What if your kids, move out? What if there's an estrangement in the relationship? Well, I live for my husband. Well, what if your husband dies, right? So you have to make sure that you have an ikigai that doesn't change. And serving God and serving others never changes. You will always have an opportunity to do that. How many people knew about flossing? You don't know about flossing? Interesting. So the flossing data is interesting because when they interviewed the principal investigators, they found that if they had hopefully more enrollees, they could show a difference in flossing twice a day versus people who never floss, showing an even greater difference, but they only found once a day. Now, why would flossing increase your lifespan? Does anyone know how that works? Sure, the theory is what happens when you floss your teeth you haven't flossed for a while? It bleeds, but the gums were already inflamed before that. And one of the dirtiest places in your body? Your mouth. So the bacteria are able to penetrate into that inflamed tissue and make their way into the systemic circulation and cause inflammation in other areas. And the theory is they inflame the coronary arteries, plaque lays down, you get a bunch of extra nanoplastics in there and calcium, right? Nanoplastics and calcium make the plaque unstable. I don't know if many of you are aware of that. Many ways we check your coronaries is we do a coronary CT, and CT picks up calcium-containing plaques, because those are the bad ones. Those tend to be the ones that will rupture, and once you rupture, it's pretty much over. I mean, you'll go so quickly, because you have a clot there, not just cholesterol, but you have a clot on top of it. So with flossing, they found that people who floss every day versus those who don't, you get 2 extra years just for flossing. And some people will say, well, flossing's not in the health message. And I'm like, well, but think about it this way. The health message is simple, economical, easy to learn, and available to everyone, right? But that's the character of God, right? He wants all his children to be happy. And what I tell people is, how hard is it to learn to floss? How long does it take you to teach someone to floss? A minute, 5 minutes or less, right? How expensive is floss? It's cheap. In fact, it's free. I want to tell you right now, if you don't have any floss, just reach down into your sock and then, no, just kidding, ladies. Sorry. Sorry about that. I know you hate that when we do that. But anyway, my point is, it's available, right? It's available to anyone who likes to make money on their investments. All right. Who would like to know how to double their money every year? Do you think that's too good to be true? How about triple? How about quadruple? I mean, I'm talking about some Bitcoin scam with you right now or something like that, right? Most of you would think that anything greater than like 10%, that's scam level, right? Scam level. I'm going to tell you this. For every hour that you exercise of any kind, you will live that hour over again and 2 or 3 hours on top of it. Exercise is quite possibly the greatest investment, bang for buck, in your life that you can make right now. And people say, oh, what kind of exercise will I do? This, that, what's my heart rate? What's the aerobic? Don't even worry about that. Just do it, right? Has anyone seen the Shia LaBeouf's video about Just Do It, the motivational video? I don't know. He's an actor, younger guy, but you just have to do it, right? The form of exercise that I'm going to recommend to you right now is what you will do the rest of your life consistently. That's it. That's it. Because even the latest Adventist health study shows that only 10% of us exercise daily. Did you know that? Very low percentage. So practical ways of doing that is when you drive to the store, right? Don't spend 5 minutes looking for the closest parking space, right? Why are you going to do that? Just park and go. Walk. Don't go to the elevator, push the button to go down one floor. Take the stairs, right? Obviously, if you're not stable, use a handrail, have a friend, whatever. But there are lots of ways of incorporating activity into your life that are easy, right? That are very easy. Who wants to tell me what the number one cause of stopping an exercise routine is? Does anyone know what the number one cause of that is? The most likely reason you are to quit exercising. Close. This is close. Very close. Injury. Injury. So do things that are sustainable. Do things that are safe. I'll take questions at the end. Number one reason you are to continue exercising. Anyone know what the number one reason is people continue exercising? No? Yes, very close. Who said social? A friend. If they have a friend. Because if you wake up at 5 a.m. and you know Susie Q is waiting on the corner for you, you're going to get up, right? But if it's just you, what are you going to do? Snooze, right? You know it's true. But if there's a layer of social accountability, that's healthy accountability, right? That's going to keep you doing it. So it's very important to do that. Even if you're an introvert, get a friend to do daily exercise with on a consistent basis. What's the most important meal of the day? But did you know that eating a whole grain for breakfast every day not only regulates your blood sugar for that meal, but for that entire day, and you live longer? So your oatmeal wasn't just something that your mom put in front of you for no reason, right? Those steel-cut oats, right? That brown rice, for those of you who are of the Asian persuasion, right? That's a reason. There's a reason. Very important. How many people here sleep at least 6 hours a night? How many people here, not as consistently? Okay. So if you are sleeping less than 6 hours a night, you are actually shortening your lifespan every night. So that's where the cutoff is. So make sure that you get not only enough sleep, but quality of sleep. And here is a very simple remedy for sleep. Ecclesiastes. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much. Interesting. You know, I have friends of mine, they're actually mostly like really fit people that tell me this. And I said, man, you do so much exercise. Oh no, I only exercise as much so I can eat more. I have friends that say that. Did you know that? They just enjoy eating. But the thing is that if you exercise and you're doing something physical, that actually helps you to sleep during the night. Now, obviously, you don't want to do something really crazy right before you go to bed, but that is one of the best things to help you sleep. Another one of the things that is a sleep destroyer is right next to every one of you right now and is an intimate part of your life. So much, you probably spend the equivalent of maybe 4 hours a day with this sleep-destroying issue. Yes, someone's holding it up. What is it? Yes, yes. Did you know this? Did you know that a screen is related to every possible negative health benefit you can imagine? Not just physical health, social health, relational health, financial health, spiritual health. There's a colleague of mine, she's a child psychiatrist. She won't even see your kid until you give her a notarized, signed affidavit that there has been no screen in front of that child for 6 months. 6 months. And people are like, oh, that's impossible. She's like, then I'm not the physician for you. Next. And she's booked like 2 years in advance. It's crazy. Because you can imagine, once you remove the screen from the kid for 6 months, what happens to their ADD and their ADHD and their anxiety and their depression, whatever. What do you think happens like 90% of the cases? Somehow they're better. Wow, what do you know, right? But the blue light spectrum in these devices annihilates your melatonin. Very, very problematic. Especially 3 hours before you go to sleep, you don't want to do this, right? So exactly, right? It's like the worst time. I've got these bright lights on me, I've got the screen, but I'm willing to shorten my longevity to increase all of yours, right? So there we go. I hope you understand this. Eat whole foods. There was an interesting study a long time in Finland, and they looked at smokers, and what are smokers going to develop? What else? Lung cancer, sure. So they looked at lung cancer as the primary endpoint, and they did what's called a control group, which they just smoked, but they did 2 experimental groups. The first experimental group took antioxidant supplements, specifically vitamins A, C, E, and selenium. The third group took antioxidant supplements in the form of food, A, C, E, and selenium, same amounts. So the control group, they developed lung cancer, right? Don't smoke, right? So the supplement group that took the pills, A, C, and selenium, did they develop more or less, I'm sorry, I mixed it around. The food group, did they develop more or less or the same amount of lung cancer as the control group? Yeah, true. The supplement group, more or less the same. More. Scary. They actually had to stop and unblind this study prematurely because from an ethics standpoint, if something is related to morbidity or mortality, you must unblind it and tell people, hey, stop smoking, and by the way, don't take supplements. Now, I'm not saying that all supplements are evil, right? But when you understand the interaction, and now that I'm married to a dietitian, I understand this much more, that if you supplement a common supplement that's been removed from all multivitamins. Does anyone know what supplement's been removed from all multivitamins? Like you can't have it in a multivitamin. It's a mineral. Do you know why they removed it? Because it shortens longevity. And also, overdose for children, most common cause of death is the iron, right? But did you know that there's another component of multivitamins that they're now going to remove? Does anyone know what the next one is? And they find it's because this deposits in places it should not, right? Yes, it's calcium. How'd you know that? Very interesting, that's right. So if your plaques in your coronary arteries have calcium deposited in them, they are unstable by definition. That's what we're looking for when we do the CT angiogram, right? We want to see if there's calcium-containing plaques because those are the bad players for MI and, of course, stroke. So you want to eat whole plant foods. And if you want to supplement, what's a way you can supplement, get more nutrients? You can juice, right? But what are you missing when you juice? Does fiber matter? Ah, yes. Have you heard of probiotics? Who's heard of probiotics? But who's heard of prebiotics? Yes. Is it important to have fiber? Yes, it is. But at least with the juicing, the ratios are similar. I'll give you an example. If you supplement with iron, your zinc absorption goes down. Did you know that? Doesn't matter how much you take. The receptors are competing. And if you supplement with zinc, which is more common for men, iron's more common for women. You supplement with zinc, your copper absorption goes down. Right? So that's the thing, is you can't win if you're chasing the supplement tail. But did you know that that's where people make so much money? With our program, Ashley and I have a coaching ministry, and they keep telling us you need a supplement line because that's where the money is. People pay big bucks. But when I tell them, most people don't need supplements, they think, oh, you're crazy, right? No, but it's not crazy. Why not have some onion juice instead, right? I don't know. I have to research the onion juice. Number 7, it's not always what you're eating. Like, I'll give you an example, okay? Can I step off the platform for a second? For a second? Okay. What is your name?
Miriam.
Miriam, thank you. I want you to hold my phone for a second. Hold it at arm's length. Is it heavy? It's not bad. It's not bad. So she doesn't think it's that heavy. But you know what the real answer is? Depends on how long you hold on to it for. Sometimes it's not what you're eating, but what's eating you. That is so huge, so huge. Type A personality. They found that the type A personality, which is like the executive type, driven, ambitious, on time, right? They actually live shorter than other personality types. And there's 2 components of that personality that kill them. Do you know what they are? Stress. No, stress can actually be a good thing. It depends on how you deal with the stress, right? For me, I probably wouldn't finish a lot of my assignments without deadlines, right? Which creates a little stress. No, this is a personality trait. 1, yes, but it's how they relate more to people, actually. Hostility. Worry is not good either, but hostility. Like, it's one thing for you to be on time, but how do you feel about the people who are not on time? Right? The other one is intolerance. Intolerance, meaning it's okay to be principled, but you don't want to be like against people who don't believe like you, right? You don't want to hate them. You don't want to be like trying to harm them, right? That only harms you. Number 8, I must confess, in the original article of U.S. News and World Reports, it said, live like a Seventh-day Adventist, but I'm just going to invite all of you to become a Seventh-day Adventist. It's okay. There's plenty of room. If any of you aren't, we're a small denomination. We got lots of room for you. Come on in. Number 9, have you noticed that elderly people have a routine? They have a solid routine. And there's a reason why that's important. Your body loves regularity. It loves it when you get up, go to sleep at the same time, you eat at the same time, you exercise at the same time. Does anyone know, in my country, they looked at a very interesting phenomenon. They saw that there was a spike in fatal heart attacks in the spring and in the fall, except in 2 U.S. states, Phoenix, like Arizona, that state, and Hawaii. Does anyone know what was causing the spike in heart attacks? The time change. Your body does not like that. In fact, it doesn't like it to the extent that there was a measurable increase in death from heart attacks at that time. And people will say, well, what about people like yourself that speak all over the world? Like, I fly 2 airlines, pretty much, Delta or United. I'm 1K on United and Diamond on Delta, which isn't the highest rank, but it's pretty high on both of them. And so I'm crossing like multiple time zones all the time, and I tell people, listen, I'm okay with losing a little bit off my edge to at least give people the chance to gain an edge on their longevity. Number 10, who has a sister? Raise your hand. Who has a close relationship with a sister? Raise your hand. Not as many people. What's interesting is that they found if you have a close relationship, specifically with your sister, that you will have less depression throughout life and you will live longer. Now, why that wasn't true for brothers, I'm not sure. Maybe we're not as empathetic, maybe we don't listen as well or something like that. But be close to the people that are close around you. Unless it is an unhealthy relationship, then you need to develop a moai, meaning like a group of friends that go through life and help each other. Number 11, who knows the marshmallow study? Who knows what the marshmallow study is? Raise your hand and tell me the marshmallow study. Go ahead.
The experiment was that the children were given a marshmallow,
Now, these were little kids. These were like toddlers, okay? Little widow kids.
and if they had the choice, they could either eat it right away, or else they can save it for 5 minutes. If they did that, they get 2 marshmallows.
Yes, that is correct. Essentially, the time limit is a little bit different. There's been multiple permutations of the marshmallow study. It was done at my alma mater at Stanford, so I was very proud of that. And what's very interesting is, what do you think many of the kids did? Right? Now, some of the kids waited, but then they gave in, they ate it. And a few of the kids waited for the observer to come back, and they enjoyed their 2 marshmallows. They followed these kids for over 40 years. I am dead serious. This is the longest prospective trial that's ever been done. And they looked at the fact that the time that the child was able to forego the immediate for the lasting benefit was related to every marker of success that you can think of. Educational success, scholarships, marital success, no jail time, financial success, like everything was related to delayed gratification. They also looked at the personalities of the kids that tended to live longer than other individuals. And does anyone know what that personality trait was? Conscientious, it's right there. It's right there. So conscientious is almost a moral trait, right? Conscientiousness just means you say what you mean and you mean what you say. Very, very interesting. Okay, now a lot of people have asked about our coaching. This is the website. You can go, you can sign up, and we're doing it for free, just for a limited time. All you have to do is make a donation to our church, the Adventist Church. There's little instructions there, and we'll do a session with you for free, for a donation of any amount. And our acronym, you guys have heard of New Start, right? Our trademarked acronym is Eternal Life. Eternal Life, number 1 is election. Make your calling and election sure, right? You must have a mission. You must have a purpose in life. But also, election is choice, right? You choose to avoid the bad things and use the good things moderately, right? That definition is directly from the Spirit of Prophecy. T is not just trust in divine power, but it's touch. What they found is one of the greatest markers and movers of longevity is second messengers now. Second messengers like hormones, right? I'll give you an example. I can raise and change your hormone levels immediately. Did you know that? Shake the person's hand next to you. Did you know that that changes your hormone levels just holding someone's hand? How many people are aware of that? How many people are aware of the 6-second kiss? The 20-second hug? Touch. My wife and I, when we go to sleep every night, we make sure that we are connected the entire time. Did you know that? The entire time. Well, you know, her feet are so cold. Well, let her warm them up on you. That's okay, right? Maybe you're too hot, right? Touch, very powerful. And the majority of this comes from a hormone called oxytocin. And that is so powerful for your health. It's not even a joke. And you can create it instantly. Instantly. But some people say, well, what if I'm alone? I can change your testosterone levels right now, immediately. Stand up for a minute. Stand up. Everybody stand up for a minute. I want you to do the Wonder Woman, okay? Hands on the hips, chest out, shoulders back. Did you know that just holding your body in that stance raises your testosterone? It's true. You can go ahead and have a seat. Just the way you hold your body not only allows you to breathe better, but it changes hormonal profiles. Exercise, we talked about that. How many of you enjoy walking barefoot on the beach? Barefoot in the green grass. Did you know there's data on that now about earthing? Incredible. Preliminary for now, there was a Tour de France. Anyone know the Tour de France? It's a race, right? The team that basically grounded themselves constantly throughout the race had no injuries. They didn't win though, just full disclosure. But they did not have any injuries, which is rare for the Tour de France. Rest, we're aware of that, not just quantity but quality. So nutrition, we talked about that. How many know what forest bathing is? Forest bathing, that's become very big now, especially in Japan. They have created forests every so many kilometers in Japan because just the act of moving through the forest lowers blood pressure, improves health. It's incredible what it's doing. Just being in nature reverses diseases. Did you know that? It's unbelievable. Yes, exactly. When I turned off the highway into this wonderful green, I was like, wonderful. How many love music? Were you aware that music actually improves or destroys your health? Anyone know what kind of music helps you think better, improves your health? Specifically, composers. I want composers. Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, that's correct. The oldies, right? The oldies, absolutely. There is measurable effects on thinking, on learning capacity, and health. That's why in hospitals, they have people coming around playing for people, harpists, things like that. At Stanford, we had, even when I was in residency there, we had regular music therapy. Did you know that? Regular music therapy. Is my wife here? Ashley, are you here? No, she's not here. She's probably getting ready for something. So air is not just important what you're breathing, but how you're breathing. How are you supposed to breathe? Does anyone know? Deep. What else? Nostrils. Did you know that when Adam was created, God breathed where? Into his nostrils. Did you know that just breathing in and out through your nose for 20 minutes raises your nitric oxide levels? We can measure it. Did you know that? Do you know what nitric oxide does? Lowers your blood pressure, increases exercise capacity, increases circulation. Perfect health depends on perfect circulation. So breathe through your nose, right? Not just what you're breathing, but how you're breathing. And again, it's not just what happens to you, it's what happens in you. Have you ever noticed that? Some people always interpret things as negative, no matter what's happening around them. I'm just very thankful that I don't have that problem. I'm usually a positive person. Even my siblings say, you don't even remember the negative things. And I was like, well, why would I? Why would I remember those things? So attitude of gratitude, a huge factor in health. Light is very important, not just for the vitamin D capacity. But vitamin D is a huge, huge part of it. Did you know they're going to reclassify vitamin D, not as a vitamin, but as a steroid? How many people were aware of that? Because it looks more like testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. It doesn't even resemble a traditional vitamin. It's very, very powerful. But what's interesting is when you look at the body's creation of vitamin D versus the active supplement form of vitamin D, did you know the body has to go through 29 different steps to create vitamin D? And did you know that at those steps, genes are turned on and off? Very interesting. So if you just give the supplement here, you didn't do all this stuff. Does that make sense? So is there a difference? Well, the molecule itself may not be different, but how it was created is. Anyone seen the data on infrared now? Very healing. But you know what's really the best form of light? The sunlight, right? I mean, we're always trying to improve on God, aren't we? Well, look at the light box and this. No, why don't you just watch the sunrise in the morning? How about that? It's just a novel idea, right? What I find surprising is of all the acronyms out there, New Start, etc., People leave out love. Love. Because love is so powerful. It is not only a force for good and healing, but it's a force for motivation. Like if you guys have all known a guy, like you were in school, there was this guy, dead-end job, grades weren't so great, really not dressed well, beat up car, whatever. All of a sudden, his car is waxed, it's running, he's got a promotion, he's getting straight A's. What happened to that guy? He has a girlfriend, yes. Yes. I'm telling you, it's a motivator. And it's a much stronger motivator than fear, which traditionally as health practitioners, as physicians, we technically use. This is not plugged in, brother. This is not plugged in. It says my computer is going to die. Let's see, I'm getting a little message here. Is power going to this? Let me make sure here. Okay, all right, I'll keep going. The show must go on, right? So love and be loved is very important. To give and receive love is very, very important, very healing. How many people know about cold plunge? Yes, but how many people do cold plunge? See, you're in Canada. You have the opportunity, right? The nice thing is that I have the beach. The Puget Sound is like 5 minutes from my house. And a beach is there, a sandy beach. And I'll go on a 5-kilometer run. And you know what I do at the end of the run? I jump in the ocean. And the Puget Sound, summer, winter, doesn't matter when. Do you know what temperature the Puget Sound is? Like all the time? It's like 40s. Like all the time. Fahrenheit, sorry. Like what is that in centigrade? Like 8, 7, 5 or something like that. But it is no joke cold. And I cold plunge for 6 minutes. And did you know when you take a hit of like heroin or cocaine, that those endorphins will last for hours, but when you cold plunge, it lasts for almost a day? Did you know that? It's serious, no joke. I'm telling you, it's no joke. It increases all the positive hormones you can imagine. And of course, ice is water, right? Water, you got to drink water. And this is going to be important. I want you to start thinking about how you can tell if you're dehydrated. Just think about it for now. I'll ask you in a second. Family and friends. I haven't heard people talk about this in their acronyms. Did you know during the pandemic, we found out that one thing was worse for your health than smoking? Does anyone know what it was? Isolation. Isolation and loneliness. Lethal to you. I don't care if you're an introvert, okay? You cannot be isolated. It will kill you, all right? You have to have social contact with family and friends. And what I try to encourage people is have a close core group of friends where you don't have to walk on eggshells, right? Where you're afraid of what you're going to say or not say, afraid to offend them. Do not have those people around you, because that's a constant cortisol-producing situation for you, constant stress hormone. Be around people where you can relax. And did you know Jesus himself had that group? Do you know who it was? It wasn't his family, interestingly enough. Ellen White says that it was a comfort and a relief to him to be outside of his home. Did you know that? Desire of Ages. Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, that may be many of our genetic families. But what home did he go to? Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, right? He had his moai. Do you realize that? The Son of God had that. How many have seen the recent data on fasting? USC just put out some studies. 72-hour fast increases circulating content of stem cells. Did you know that? Do you know what stem cells mean? That's regeneration. When you refeed, the stem cell pool increases in your body. Also, the natural killer function goes into overdrive. Now, USC was doing this mostly for like cancer patients and things like that, but I think the implications are obvious, right? Very, very helpful for regeneration and stem cells. Now, the last one is very important. This is the proprietary one of our acronym, which is evaluate. This is all in the spirit of prophecy, but no one has ever used this. Now, I'm going to ask you that question. Remember the question I had for you? How can you tell you're dehydrated? Tell me. Raise your hand. Headache, thirsty? Dry skin, yes. The urine, what about the urine? It's dark. Now, how can you tell if you're well hydrated? The urine becomes light. Did you know that the good Lord has given you ways to evaluate your health on a moment-by-moment basis? Did you know that? And not just hydration. I can teach you how to do that in every area of your health. Because all of us have check engine lights, but they're not all the same. And you can't just say one size fits all for people. I'm going to say something that's going to seem like blasphemy to those of you who are Seventh-day Adventists. Are you ready? Some cannot tolerate milk while others thrive on it. Beans are healthy articles of food, but beans are poison to me. Did you know she said those things? It's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to have a customized understanding of that person's life and physiology. And that cannot be gained by just kind of a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. You need to ask yourself, how's that working for you? And if that's not working for you, you need to make changes like yesterday, right away. But just as you know that you have thirst, you have constipation, you have dark urine, you have dry skin, you have headaches, you have dizziness, you have whatever. I can think of dozens of signs and symptoms for dehydration. In every element of health, there are other ways to evaluate. And not everyone's the same. I'll give you a personal one. I have a little lymph node right here. It's about the size of a pea, a little bit less than a pea. And when I get something that I'm fighting against, like virus, whatever infectious illness, it will swell and will become tender before I actually get sick. It will give me a beacon of warning. And I've learned to evaluate it and immediately take action. Immediately take action. So let's kind of summarize here. All of these secular sources are kind of telling us what we can do or not do to have longevity. But a lot of people will still ask me, they're like, well, what's the secret? It's got to be diet, right? It's got to be diet. But did you know that there is two major cultures that are more faithful plant-based vegetarians than the Seventh-day Adventists? Does anyone know who they are? There are two major world religions. I'll give you that hint. Buddhism, yes, and their monks are vegan. Did you know that? What's the other? Sikhs, yes, Sikhs are vegan, but they're not as large. Hinduism, right? But they don't live longer. Did you know that? They're not part of the blue zones. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm not saying diet is bad. I'm not saying it's bad to be plant-based. Praise the Lord for the plant-based meals, right? Amen. Well, it must be exercise then, right? Anyone know who Jim Fixx was? Jim Fixx. He was big in exercise, right? Ran. What happened to Jim? Well, he keeled over dead, like suddenly, because his arteries were completely blocked. Did you know that? So exercise is not the only thing. Also, the Adventists, only 10% of them exercise daily. Did you know that? So it must be genetics, right? It's got to be genetics. I want you to know that they've looked at certain at-risk populations, African Americans specifically. They have a higher risk of hypertension and diabetes. But when they become Seventh-day Adventists, did you know that those risk factors fade away? Incredible. That is the power of our health message. Yes. So it must be optimism, right? It's not actually optimism, because I might say, oh, that's nothing. That's just a mole, and then I never get it checked out, right? It's what's the personality trait that is listed as relating directly to longevity? Conscientiousness. What does that mean? It means you say what you mean what you say, you follow through. When you're doing your workout that, your physiotherapist recommends, you don't go 1, 2, skip a few, 10, 11, right? You're doing what you should be doing. And that's another thing we haven't even added. We just recently added integrity to our acronym, which is having a clear conscience. Do you know how important that is? And again, not everyone's conscience is the same, but at least obey your own conscience. And that's the difficulty as Seventh-day Adventists, is because Seventh-day Adventists have more information than any other group. But the problem is when you don't follow that information, it actually makes it worse for you. Because your conscience is saying, right? You need less information as a Seventh-day Adventist and more inspiration. Less information, more transformation. Less information, more motivation. That is where the weak point for the Seventh-day Adventists are, is that their conscience is constantly being damaged because they have so much information. Well, what about faith, right? What's interesting is if you are committed to your faith of any kind, you get two to 3 extra years. So it's good to be committed to a faith. But some people will say, oh, the Adventists, they end up being the blue zone because they don't smoke or drink or use caffeine. But did you know there's another religion that doesn't smoke or use and drink caffeine? Who? The Mormons, that's right. But they are not a longevity zone. Did you know that? I take that back. There is one element of their church. If you want to look it up as a professional, Bigelow is the major researcher that does a lot of the Mormon articles. He's out of UCLA. Some others may have taken over for him. But if you are white, male, and high priest, you live 15 years longer. But again, that's a very niche sort of individual. I don't even know what a high priest is, honestly, in their religion. I'd have to research it. But the bottom line is that we were designed for the best possible quality and quantity of life, and we can reap the benefits of these longevity zones by becoming part of their lifestyle, by doing what they are doing. Does anyone know who Steve Jobs was? Do you know when he died? How old was he?
In his 40s.
50s, not quite the 40s, but yes, 50s. Do you think he would have paid to live longer? What do you think he would have paid to get 2 more years? Anything, right? What if he could have had 11 more years of quality as well as quantity? He would have liquidated all his stock, given up all his positions. Did you know that? Because health isn't everything. But without health, everything is nothing, right? That was from one of my mentors, Dr. Hans Deal, in his memory. That was a coined phrase that he often used. I miss him very much. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. So does God want you to be healthy? But not at the expense of your soul, right? Does that make sense? We shouldn't want to be healthy just for the sake of being healthy, but so that we can help others be healthy. So that we can help others not just live to 100, not just 120, but for eternity, right? And I want you to know that people who are desiring plastic surgery, Botox, PRP, all these hair transplant things, they are not evil individuals. They are just searching for what God has placed into every single human being. Did you know that? But they don't know where to find it. And they're looking in the wrong places. So I'm going to close with this quote. I'm going to go past our fundraising efforts for our Ukrainians that live in our home. Praise God, one of them's getting married. Amen. But this is a specific quote for those of you who are Seventh-day Adventists. I want you to look at this very carefully. A lot of my friends will say, well, I'm diabetic. My dad was diabetic. My mom was diabetic, so it's genetic. Have you ever heard that? Stuff like that? But do you know what that person's really saying? They're saying that no matter what I do or don't do, I will still have diabetes. The guaranteed way to fail 100% of the time is never to try. Did you know that? Wayne Gretzky, anyone know who Wayne Gretzky was? He says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that's true. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. Henry Ford, right? Those are true with God guiding, right? So I want you to take a look at this statement. At the court of Babylon were gathered representatives from how many lands? All lands. Men of the what? Richest talent. Men the most richly, highest talent, thank you. Men the most richly endowed with what? So what is that? What is a natural gift? Your genetics, right? Your genetics, right? That's a natural gift. So they had everything genetically. They were the creme de la creme and possessed of the broadest culture that the world could bestow. They're like, well, I never got a chance to go to school. My mom and dad were dropouts, right? These guys had every advantage, right? To be developed to the absolute maximum. They had the maximum genetic talents and gifts, yet among them all, who was without a peer? The Hebrew youth. You realize it's only 4 of them? It's a small number. But what's interesting is what the Spirit of prophecy says immediately after. They were without a peer, and what's the first thing that's identified? Is it spirituality? Yes, physical strength. And the number 2 that's mentioned, 2 superficial qualities. Do you realize that? I don't believe that's because God is superficial, but because he uses ways that you can evaluate. Physical strength is easy to evaluate. Beauty is easy to evaluate, right? In mental vigor and literary attainment, they stood what? What does it mean to be unrivaled? You're the best. There's nobody else even on the same dimension. Do you realize that? The erect form, right? These are some markers now, right? The firm elastic step, the fair countenance, the undimmed senses. Listen to this. The untainted breath. I'm telling you, if the southern exit is not working, the northern gate may become blocked. I'm just saying. That's how it works, right? What's very interesting is your skin will take over for elimination when the other systems of elimination are not operational. Did you know that? It's very important because the body's going to get rid of it somehow. And however you want it to get rid of it is up to you, honestly. The untainted breath. All were so many certificates of good habits, insignia of the nobility with which nature honors those who are obedient to her laws. So was this genetics? Was this random? Did it say they were just, endowed? Why were they successful? They were obedient to nature's laws. But the thing is, we need to learn what those laws are and how to implement them for our personal lives and physiologies, because it's not all the same for everybody, right? And that's my appeal to you, especially if you're Seventh-day Adventists. Did you know when the Hebrews went out into the wilderness, they estimate there's about 5 million of them. What was their incidence of diabetes? What was their incidence of cardiac disease? What was their incidence of arthritis? What was their incidence? Nothing. Do you realize that? A population of 5 million with no measurable disease? People say that's impossible. No, it's reality. When you are doing what God designs you for. And I believe that he designs that for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In Deuteronomy it says that the nations will come to you and they will say, who is this God? And what are these laws that he has given you? Did you know that? You can be your own commercial. People will come to you and say, what are you doing? Are you on the juice? What are you doing, right? Seriously. That's what you want. Because when they are interested in the physical and how they can improve that, they'll find out that the source of that is actually the spiritual. And that's what will help them to live, not for 100 years, but forever, right? And isn't that what we all want? So I'm going to make an appeal. How many of you know that there's some area of your life that could probably be changed for the better? Raise your hand. You can think of one thing that, yeah, I could probably do that a little differently and probably improve my health. Okay, that one thing that you thought of, how many of you would like to ask God tonight to help you make that change? All right, if that's your decision, stand with me as we pray. Loving Father in heaven, you are the great physician, and I'm so thankful that you have given my wife and I an understanding of how to reclaim our health, to enjoy greater health than I've ever enjoyed in my life. But I know, Lord, that that has not been given to us to keep to ourselves. Help us to share it with those around us effectively. And you see those who are standing, Lord. I don't know what it is that they're trying to improve, but they know that there's an area that needs to change. And I pray, Lord, you would not just give them the information. They know the information. They're standing. They know there's an area. Give them the motivation, information to give them the transformation. Inspire them with your Holy Spirit. And may their change encourage not only themselves and their families, but everyone with whom they come in contact with. That the God that heals physically is the same God that heals spiritually. We ask you in Jesus' name, amen. I have to take questions at the door. Thank you. Yes?
You don't want to have a couple questions, Dan?
Yeah, let's do a couple questions. That's fine. Betty's told me maybe take a couple questions now. Just raise your hand, and we'll take a couple questions. Yes? Vitamin D.
So I'm just wondering about vitamin D. You know, the big thing is, you know, to put sunscreen on, and, you know, how does the body get vitamin D if you constantly have 50 sunscreen, and do we...
My understanding in Canada is that they will no longer even draw your levels. Is that true? They just put everybody on supplementation. Is that true or false? Oh, you have to pay for it. Okay, so normal lab routines, normal, like regular covered studies, that vitamin D is no longer one of them. You have to pay out of pocket. Is that correct? You also have to convince someone to do it, to order it. So it's basically an act of Congress to get your vitamin D level drawn, I assume. But what's interesting is that I believe that it's true. Many people are low, but vitamin D is more of a marker of health. I'll give you an example. Cholesterol would be a marker of health. But if I suck all the cholesterol out of your body, have I made you healthy? If I pump a bunch of vitamin D, squirt it into your body, are you suddenly healthy? No, right? Those are true both ways. Because remember, you're skipping all the 29 steps that turn genes on and off. In my area of the woods, Pacific Northwest, do you know we have the highest rate of MS in the world? And I believe that may be partially due to heavy vitamin D supplementation. Because there's interesting things. There's about 20 studies I still haven't looked at on it, but they're looking at possible correlations there. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't take supplements. Do what your doctor instructs you to do. But if you were to sit in my backyard in Seattle, okay? Now what's nice is I have trees and fencing all around. Nobody can see you. And you were house sitting for me, and you lay there in your birthday suit, in all your glory, on a spring day, not even summer, okay? Spring day. Do you know how much vitamin D you would create in an hour? Anyone want to give me a guess? Yeah, give me a number. You can give me IUs if you want. 10 IUs, anyone else? 20? Who said 10,000? Not 20,000, but it's 10,000 an hour. Yes, it is. I'm dead serious. If you are in a spring day and you're a white Caucasian, I am not. I am half Caucasian. I am half Asian. I'm both, right? And also I'm dark, right? So dark is a disadvantage for vitamin D production. So it's nice because black don't crack and Asian don't raisin, but you don't get a lot of vitamin D. I'm just saying you don't get a lot of vitamin D. It's hard. It's hard. So, but if you're Caucasian, you can synthesize it a lot easier. Like my redheaded friends, they love it. They're like, I get plenty of vitamin D. Whenever they draw my level, it's like always high. It's great. So yes, you need to get it. But I'm telling you, to raise it naturally is very difficult. When I had what I believe to be COVID in March 2020, I had my vitamin D levels drawn. The Adventist clinic there in Guam did a full panel on me for everything. And the only thing they found that was off is my vitamin D level was low. It was 22. And it should be like 30 to 100, somewhere around there. And they said, wow, you should probably start supplementing. I've seen people with single digits, okay? Single digits. And they said, you should supplement. I said, can I raise it naturally? Like, I'm in Guam, right? Why wouldn't I do that? Anyone know who Wes Youngberg is? Wes Youngberg? Great proponent for longevity. The man is in his mid-60s, and he still looks like a California surfer dude, like really young, like really healthy. You know his hair is not dyed? That's his hair. He's got it. He's got his regular pigment. Amazing. He does a tremendous amount of work, but he did the same thing. He tried to raise his vitamin D levels by just running on the beach every day. It's almost impossible. It's hard. I can tell you that I raised my vitamin D level 8 points in 6 months in Guam. And that means every opportunity I would go out on the beach and lay out. I mean, I'd find a secluded place and literally lay out. Like one side, and I used it, have you seen the Norwegian vitamin D calculator? If you type in Norwegian vitamin D calculator, it'll tell you how long to get how many units, how long till you burn, and I would flip over exactly at the right time. And it only went up to normal, but it went up like 8 points in 6 months. So it is tough to raise, but I can tell you that is the best way to do it because it goes through all those 29 steps. And the genomes get turned on and off. The good ones get turned on, the bad ones get turned off. But don't burn. And if you need to take supplements, you can. Did you know some foods are high in vitamin D? Anyone know? I know none of you probably eat this one, but does anyone know the highest vitamin D containing food? Yes, it is. What particular fish? It's wild-caught Alaska salmon. Did you know that? I'm not advocating to eat salmon. Does anyone know the vegan source? Yes. Who said mushrooms? Yes, that's correct. But what's the catch? Well, the mushrooms have to be exposed to the sunlight to synthesize it. Typically, mushrooms are grown, right? It's like mushroom management. Have you heard of mushroom management? You keep them in the dark and you feed them
Manure.
Exactly. You got it, Betty. Yeah, so I would recommend getting your vitamin D level checked, even if you have to pay for it. That's important. And to keep your vitamin D level above 45, if you can. All the positive things for health, not just cancer, but immune system, infectious disease, COVID, right? COVID, even a low normal vitamin D level compared to a high normal vitamin D level with COVID, if you were hospitalized, you had a 40% mortality for low normal. And for high normal, it was 4%, so 10 times protection. And that's just for infectious disease. One more question. All right, Betty's going to try to reach you.
About nanoplastics. What
Bad
damage,
juju.
what does it do to the body, and how do we get rid of it?
So the theory behind nanoplastics is that they create high-risk plaques in the carotid artery, stroke, right, and coronary arteries, heart attack. And the theory is it creates a chronic state of inflammation because that's a foreign particle. The body's trying to get rid of it. It doesn't belong there, right? Even calcium, even though it may be dystrophic calcification, at least calcium is recognized by the body. The plastics are like, what is this, right? And as far as getting rid of it, there's no real data that I've seen on how to get rid of the nanoplastics. But I do think that you can start by minimizing your exposure, right? And as far as removing plaques out of the arteries, what they've found is if you place people on a very aggressive sort of lifestyle program, the HDL, which is the good cholesterol, will begin to eat away at those plaques. and the immune system will begin to eat away at those plaques. White blood cells, they can engulf and, I believe, destroy even nanoplastics because they have peroxidase, they have superoxide dismutase, which are very powerful oxidants. They're almost like acids, like destroy them, you know? But I don't know of any data that shows, okay, you have the nanoplastics, what do you do to get rid of it? I don't know of any data. Maybe one more question?
This lady back here.
Okay, sorry, back
There
here.
was somebody back here that had their hand up. Oh, it was you.
I give you credit for the onion juice.
Just, you had mentioned that you notice a thing on your lymph node, and you said you take action. I'm curious what your action is when your
Well,
check engine light
in
goes
the
on.
case of illness, who knows what the rest of the quote says? In the case of illness, the cause should be ascertained. Wrong habits of life should be corrected. Right ones established. Then, what's the third step? Nature is to be assisted in expelling impurities. That's Ministry of Healing, page 127. Did you know that? I use that in every single patient encounter that I have. If you don't know the cause, you don't know where you're going with that person at all, right? You need to know why they're having this. There was an individual who was worried. She had an ultrasound, right? The ultrasound showed some lesions, and they recommended biopsy. She didn't want the biopsy. And I asked her, I said, well, why don't you want the biopsy? Because it's not going to change what I'm going to do. So she's doing all this natural remedy stuff. And I said, you can have lesions that are, yes, could be cancerous, which is what she was worried about. They could be, like, benign. They could be infectious. They could be parasitic. They could be, like, there's so many things it could be. And the thing is that if they were, like, infectious or parasitic, wouldn't it be nice to know? You know, just get rid of it. Just drain it. Suck it out, you know? And so that, I don't feel, is a wise way of approaching health or disease. You should know what the cause is, right? What is the cause? So I would try to figure out first what was the cause. And that's not always going to be the same for everybody. There's two individuals, when I was at ASI last, I talked to them about their diabetes, and I never talked about diet once because that wasn't the cause. I found out within the first maybe 5 minutes of talking to them what the real cause was of their diabetes. And this wasn't this individual, but there was one person that Wes Youngberg had. They couldn't take care of the diabetes. It was just out of control, and she was walking, she was doing all this stuff. And then finally, he stumbled across the fact that this lady had an early childhood trauma. And once they resolved that, glucose was normal, hemoglobin A1C normalized, everything just went to normal, like with very little intervention. And he was, you know, running after the traditional lifestyle remedies. Well, let's put you on raw, let's put you on this, you know. No, that wasn't the cause, right? So I think sometimes we feel like one size fits all, and that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. You have to take time to talk to that person, and not everyone's the same, right? Beans are one of the most powerful elements of longevity and nutrition, but if they're poison to you, right? And how do you think Ellen White figured out that beans were poison to her? What sort of things did she experience? She probably had gas, bloating, pain, cramping, right? She realized, I cannot eat these. Even though, for most people, they're going to be helpful. And she even says they're helpful articles of food, but not for me, right? Not for me. And that's what I would say to any sort of question like this is, what is the cause? And that's the thing, is most of us don't even know where to begin. And that's where I and Ashley want to help people to be able to evaluate so they can understand their bodies, understand how they work, and understand what is specifically tailored to them. Like, I'll tell you, I'm convinced. When I look at the acronym Eternal Life, every one of us has one of those areas, which is our strength, our power category, and also our Achilles heel. And they're not always the same category. But I know Ashley's dad, he is struggling right now with a severe health condition. And Ashley created an event. It was at the museum. They have a family day 3 times a year. You can invite all of your family, and it's free. And he has a big family. Ashley's mom is SDA, but her father is LDS. And he's big into family. And when that day occurred, he had more energy, more strength, more motivation for weeks afterwards. Because why? He was around his family, right? And that's huge for him. I believe that all of us have one category, which is our power area, that fuels us more, and also which is our weakest area, which destroys us more than anything else. And that may not be the same for everybody, right? You may have something, the way I describe it is genetics don't determine if you will get sick, it determines where you will get sick. To coin Dr. Deal again, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And if you know where your genetic weakness is, you don't roll over and play dead, right? You don't say, well, there's nothing I can do. You have to work 5 times harder now on that area than the average person because you know where you have the weakness. And I create a layer of accountability. Like when I was at a camp meeting in Germany, I said, I am going to be outside, I think my lecture was on exercise or something like that. I'm going to be outside of the hotel where we're all staying at 7 a.m. and we'll all go for a 5-kilometer brisk walk. I will meet everyone there. Now, why do you think I made that announcement at the end of my lecture? So I would go, see? Because if I make the announcement, then what's going to happen if I don't show? I'm going to look like an idiot, right? And as an Asian, it's all shame-based, right? It's true. I know how I work, right? No shame. Like anything but shame. But if I'm there, that's honor, right? That's huge for my culture because my mom was Chinese, right? So you have to know what motivates you. You have to know how your mind thinks, and you have to know how to keep yourself accountable, right? When I go into Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, any of these pharmacies, I go down to the free blood pressure machine. I always check it. I take a picture of it, and I send it to Ashley. Why do I send it to Ashley? That's my wife. Accountability. My grandfather had a triple bypass in his 50s. So that's the genetic weakness, right? So I keep a tight control over all of the risk factors for heart disease. I'll give this, can anyone name all 7 major risk factors for heart disease without looking at your phone? If you can name all 7, I'll give you $100. Raise your hand. Ready? You have nothing to lose. Come on. All right, I'll name them. I bet you can get the big 4. Smoking. Just the top 4 for right now I'm looking. I heard number 6. Heart disease, not cancer. Smoking. High blood pressure. Also high cholesterol. And the 4th big risk factor for heart attacks? If you have this, you're 10 times more likely to die of a heart attack. Diabetes, very good. Does anyone know what the next 3 are? In order. Nope. Sedentary lifestyle. Obesity, I heard that from someone. And you know what the last one is they added? Sleep. Didn't know that, did you? That's recent. I had a friend of mine, he sent me a screenshot on a text message of ZKG, and he said, hey, what do you think of this? I said, I hope you are in the emergency room right now because that is an active MI on that EKG. He's like, yeah, I'm in the ER. That's what they think too. And I'm like, Lifetime follows our message. Lifetime vegetarian, never smoked or drank, anything like that, but sleep. Oh, he does so many mission trips. This guy comes home and he's planning the next one. He goes out the next morning at 4 a.m. Sleep. Now, thankfully, he didn't have any cardiac damage. Praise the Lord. But he was a reminder of that most recent major risk factor for the number one cause of death is sleep. Okay, we'll make that the last question. Sound good? So we can get some sleep, right? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much.